The older I get, the more I try to appreciate the control we have over how we respond to things. Importantly, I have the choice to see the positive, or at least the potential, in things that happen to me that aren't necessarily what I prefer. This has really got me wondering if most things in life, maybe everything in life, is inherently meaningless, giving us the power to decide whether things are good or bad. And that was how I stumbled upon something called nihilism. The word nihilism comes from the Greek nihil, to mean nothing. It dates back to 19th century Russia and notably was used by Friedrich Nietzsche, I think that's how you say it, in reference to the disintegration of morality in the West. Nihilism has got a very long and rich history, but I don't want to focus too much on that in this video. From there, it evolved into a slightly different meaning and was used to describe the non-existence of any meaning or purpose in life. There are no values or morals that we can know, teach, and communicate. In other words, nihilism says that nothing really exists. Nothing has any inherent meaning. Nihilism doesn't exactly have the happiest or most positive history and is often associated with being extremely pessimistic, skeptical, and even destructive. However, at least based on today's understanding of nihilism, it can't be intertwined with a negative outlook on life because that would imply that life has meaning, a negative meaning, and nihilism says that life has no meaning. Nihilists don't believe in anything. They have no inherent feelings one way or the other toward anything. What's interesting, and this is something some people argue, is that nihilism contradicts itself in a couple of ways. For starters, nihilism argues that nothing really exists, including the self, which would mean that nihilism couldn't exist. Second, nihilism is a belief in nothing, but if you believe in nothing, then you technically believe in something, that something being nothing. There are different types of nihilism. Two of the more common types are existential nihilism and moral nihilism. Usually we are referring to existential nihilism, which goes back to the belief that nothing has any inherent meaning or value. Moral nihilism says that morality doesn't exist. No choices are more or less moral than others, and that's because nothing has any meaning. So if it has no meaning, we can't define whether it's moral or not. There are other types, including political nihilism, which rejects all social and political institutions, and metaphysical nihilism, which says that it's possible that nothing concrete and physical exists in this world. So there's always that common denominator where nihilism is saying, however you feel about this, don't bother because this thing carries no inherent meaning. I get how nihilism can kind of get lumped in with being extremely negative or hopeless, but really that wouldn't be possible since nihilism is a lack of belief. For like a minute, I wondered if I was a nihilist because I often think that many things in life have no built-in meaning, but I don't stop there. I believe that the meaning something has is the one we give it, and in that case, I try to choose as best I can to give things a positive meaning, even if something happens that's not what I prefer. So I couldn't be a nihilist, but still having a little bit of nihilist in me, I would argue, has helped me tremendously. I've given myself the freedom to decide whether the things that happen to me are good or bad. I was trying to think of examples from my own life and then realized how incredibly privileged I am. I was thinking about a house we wanted to buy that we really loved and it didn't work out. And I was really upset for a second, but then I thought, okay, it wasn't meant to be. We dodged a bullet, great, thank you. And then we ended up finding our dream house. My life is so hard, I know. Maybe a better example is late last year, early this year actually, I had to get a breast biopsy done. My mammogram showed some suspicious tissue when I had a bunch of lumps and whatnot. So of course, the first thing that comes to my mind is cancer. This went on for about 5 months before I ultimately got the biopsy, and I spent much of that time asking all of the what ifs. What if it is cancer? Then what? What am I gonna do? I exhausted myself so much, I wore myself down so much that by the end, I had gotten to a point where I was like, all right, so what if it is? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna handle it. I worked myself up to the point of tears day after day after day over something that may or may not happen. And if it happened, you handle it, because what else are you going to do? Out of pure desperation and exhaustion, I stopped looking at it as a potential death sentence, because what I had been doing clearly wasn't working for me. Being devastated and terrified wasn't working. I wasn't helping myself. It took me a while to get to that point, but I did. It ended up being nothing, by the way. I want to acknowledge that I know how insensitive this way of thinking can sound. Like when it was my own health scare, I had no issues telling myself, Megan, come on, get it together. But I would never, ever, ever, ever look at someone else and say that. I would never look at, someone who's distraught because of their health or financial situation, or they're going through a divorce or whatever. I'd never be like, well, why don't you just choose to see the positive? At the end of the day, we're human, and it's human nature to experience an incredible range of emotions. But I try to give myself boundaries. If something happens and my initial reaction is sadness or fear, I'm going to allow myself to feel that, because it's natural. Like when I was laid off one time, I was so stressed about money. I do not do well with financial stress. I never have. That got very old very quickly. Agonizing over, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? That was not serving me. That wasn't making me money. So I had to move past that and go into problem-solving mode. And that's the boundary for me. I allow myself to feel the negative emotion for a little while, and then it's, okay, now what? That's been an effective way for me personally to handle things. To be clear, I have read that some people consider themselves nihilist, but then also take an approach similar to mine. Like they believe that nothing has any real meaning, so they get to choose. Whereas other nihilists are more strict. They believe everything is meaningless, period. So I guess there's some degree of flexibility there. Maybe, at least that's what I read. Nihilism is an interesting topic because it takes away everything's power in a sense. Nothing can bring you down, but also nothing can lift you up. And I want to find things that are going to lift me up in life. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I don't think nihilism is for me, but I do like the idea of choosing how we respond to things. I consider myself an emotional person, a sensitive person, and I love looking for the best in things. I love enjoying the little things in life. To me, choosing how I react to things is power and freedom. It's almost a form of abundance in my mind. I'd love to know what you think, so drop me a comment to say hello, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up while you're at it. See you next time.